Since Daf Yomi Yerushalmi Pesachim in the article Oz Vadeshim and Mamish Tapelam Gimel Amud Aleph, and in the Vilna Mamish Tapachov Test Amud Aleph. In both cases, we taught in the Mishnah. Moshim and Shobal and Tanagolim. So it seems like it's two separate things actually. According to the second lashon, according to Ada, because Shabachim is the lashon used for doves, not for chickens. So it'd be two separate things. Moshim and Shabachim. You put doves in the dovecot in order to sit on their eggs, and tiny golin, you put hens in the chicken coops on their eggs about barbosa. For the Nissan, it's not considered to be a malacha, which is also to do on the 14th. Tiny golin shabarcha, if a hen fled away from sitting on the egg, so you bring it back to the Parasir. So in Koma says even on Cholamoid. Put it back, obviously, because there'd be a loss if you don't hatch the eggs and as chicks, and they can't, after some amount of time, they can't be eaten because they're ready to develop the chicks. So therefore, you can put it back. It's a davar of it. And if the hen's sitting on the chicks, or the dove, in the case of the doves, dies, Moshe put another one there in its stead. Gorpni tachas ragle abhema barabosor. On Erev Pesach, you can remove the refuse, the excrement from underneath the legs of the animal in the stable. But moed misalkin studim, and on Chol Moed, then you don't toss it outside, but you can remove it from underneath the push to the side. Okay, on Chol Moed, you can actually remove it from the stable. On Chol Moed, just move it around so it's not underneath their legs. But you can base uman, and you can bring vessels from the house of the craftsman, and even though on Yudalit, even though it's not for the purpose of you can take delivery on your vessels. So Gemara says, "Moed osir." So going back on the Reish, says Ada says, "Moed osir sheep shavachim." On Chol Moed, you can't actually put the dove on top of the eggs or the chicken on top of the eggs. Only if it's fled, you're allowed to put it back. But you're not allowed to put it to it l'chatchila. I guess it's that type of malacha, and it's not davar aved. You're not allowed to do on Chol Moed. Use the eggs for on l'chatchila Chol Moed. Use the eggs for to make a hard-boiled egg. So you have to have chicks. Maybe it's moed. Also, you don't husband made an animal on Chol Moed. It's considered to be a form of malacha, which Chazal asert. Amalichas bakros, but you can says come in. You can bring the bakros. Malkum sheishim be'emos arbe. Then it's like a corral with a lot of animals. And if it gets mated because it commingles with other animals, that's fine. You didn't actually husband it. You can do hakazas adam, which is refuah for both a person and for an animal on Chol Moed. Veino monim refuah may adam behem moed, and you can tell any type of medical treatment from an animal, for human being or an animal on Chol Moed, even though for Shabbos itself we refrain from doing so. Tanigolesh she borcha mezina sonkoma. So we said if a hen fled, that you put it back in its place. Now the next line, the mashbiach takes out and puts it in after the next line. So so let's do that. And so immediately after we say right? Still quote from the Mishnah, but you put another one in instead. And that Gemara says there's a limit after 3 days. Putting it back is not going to do any good. So if it's in the first 3 days after the tiny golas rebelled and left its roost, I don't know if it's the right term, roost, because roost refers to rooster, but place where it was sitting. So then you can put it back. And it also has to be at what point is it permitted to put it back? Only after it's already been sitting there for 3 days, in which case it's reached a point of no return. Evidently it can no longer be used as a regular egg. So if it's been sitting there for 3 days and it's within 3 days of it having rebelled, then you can put it back. You need both conditions. So Gemara asks, these you said 3 days me'es leis. My Amrei Mona Mastis Amr Kain. Does the Mishnah actually say this? It says that that would be Shloshas or Arbos or Chamishas. Right, they have to be on the 13th, and then the 14th and the 15th. But our Mishnah said you're Moshivan on the 14th, so you don't have 3 days. It's sitting there. It's only 2 days. Mitzvah Yom Kekulo. Maybe it's maybe you have to say if it's going to work, you have to say Mitzvah Yom Kekulo, right? Because then you have partial days, but you don't have full 72 hours. So everyone said Tipati Shashamela. And then he says, no, there are 2 separate clauses, the 2 separate statements. You can put the chick, the hen on the eggs on the 14th, but if it ran away on the Chol Hamoed, it's only if it ran away after 72 hours have elapsed since it started sitting, which means that it would have started sitting on the 13th, not on the 14th. And so those are 2 separate statements. One is when you can be motion for the 14th, but you should know if it ran away, only you can put it back if it already started sitting on its own before the 14th on the 13th, so it had 3 full days before it ran away. And of course, then you've gone past the point of no return. Okay, so we go to the next part of our Mishnah, which has to do with the removing refuse. Zevel shemamafui. The refuse, the excrement which you have in a mavui, misaukel side. You can move it to the side. You don't remove it all together. Evidently, because those streets, they say that before the invention of automobile, the streets of major cities were always disgusting and smelled horrible because they're full of manure from the horses. So the street is expected to be. And manure and urine, I guess. So the street is expected to be somewhat disgusting. So therefore, we're not going to let you Dalit move the refuse completely from the street. Shemavim is halkulitzad. Shebachotz is stable in the yard, which is getting more clean. What's the ashba? You can remove it altogether to the ashba outside and take it to a garbage dump. Amrei ba'ada the tamar b'chotz k'tanev. Only because it becomes the conditions are unbearable. But a chotz gedola, then misakal etzad, you move it to the side, and you can't take it out to the ashba. Harefes ben gdola ben ketana, presumably because it's a enclosed space, stable, whether it's large or small. What's the ashba? You can remove on Yudal. You can move it completely and take it to the ashba. But said mination ivula kosher, because the so I assume because of closed space. Let's see what the Moshe says. Yeah, it sounds like this idea. Closed, tight space, so therefore you can remove the stuff. Okay, halacha tes. The Anshe Richo did 6 things. 3 Chazal protested, and 3 Chazal did not protest. These are the ones they did not protest. Markivin the Kolim Kol Hayom. The entire 14th day of Nisan, they would graft palm trees. The way it works, says Bnei Moshe, they would bring branches of male palm trees and graft them onto female palm trees in order that it should produce fruit. The Korchit Eshma. The question is what that means. Bnei Moshe brings down the Gemara Farish Charamar Shelo Yu Mafsikin Ben Teva Leteva. They wouldn't interrupt between words. Charamar said Shelo Yu Mafsikin Ben Echel Baruch. They wouldn't interrupt between Echel and Baruch. But this time it's somebody Shelo Yu mean Baruch Shem V'Gomer Klal. They wouldn't say Baruch Shem K'Vo Mechusah at Lom Avero. So I have the material what Korchin means wrapped together. Shema means. The coach stream of goats leave Omer, and they would harvest and make piles of before the carbon Omer. And the Pnei Moshe says, "Sami mikan katsira." Remove from here katsira. That was an issue. The katsira chiyama mutar. You're certainly allowed to harvest before the carbon Omer. The shir maybe Omer iyata kotzer. Place you can bring the carbon Omer from there. You can harvest. Maybe at the kotzer. Place you can't bring the carbon over there. You can harvest. Richo shiaba emek and Richo, which is in a valley. Shem being based on mokim. You don't bring the carbon from valleys. Mutar litzolif nea Omer, allowed to harvest for the Omer. In Cain, something more erased here in this version of Bnei Moshe. I guess Mao lo micha biyanik tani mutar kliyama. So the issue is not the Ketzira, which is mutar, but the Goichim, that they would make a pile. And that it says Goichim, so us Gadish, min al-Chadosh livnei Omer, the lo kashin dima atzim echem minayu. And they were not concerned they might come to eat. If it's Zeu Shlo B'Ratz Chachamim, this Chachamim did not like El Shlo Micha B'Yodam. They didn't protest it. El Shemichu, back to Mishnah, El Shemichu, these are the things they did protest. Matin Kim Zio Shel Hekdesh, says Bnei Moshe, Hema Gidul, well, Tim Korban here. Tin Kim Zio's Gidulim and Gidulim, they allowed the growth. And Novish Gelu Charuvim Shikmin, these were branches which grew in carobs and sycamore trees. I think a few days ago, translated Shita, which is a cedar, as a sycamore, which is a mistake. Shikma is a sycamore tree. Shiktisha of the same which their forefathers had consecrated. They allowed having a noah from the growth from these trees, which are hektish. So that's Chachamim were moich on this. V'eichlin mitachas hanisharim b'Shabbos. And they eat Shabbos, the fruit which fell from the tree. They don't know if it fell on Shabbos or from before Shabbos. And the Chachamim were moich on this. For nice thing, pay yerik, and they would give payah for vegetables, and vegetables are potter from payah because it has to be davar shemachnis u'chiyum, has to be something which you could stockpile and warehouse. Again, stockpile and warehouse vegetables without refrigeration, of course. And Chachamim were moich because, of course, by making payah, you potter it from the other matanos. Therefore, they become from Meiser, Truman Meiser, so therefore Chachamim, Michu by Chachamim, and these last ones, Chachamim protested. Okay, so the Gemara says that Man Tanakotim, Man Tanagochim. So a very important name, Moshe here. Moshe says, Man Tanakotim, Meir Chuli. Lava Masisin Donka, it's not going to Mishnah. The Rebbe Yeshua pleading with the second pair Gimel. The machlokas in Tosefta. They were kotzim and gochim rotzach chachamim. According to they were kotzim and godish rotzach chachamim. Or maybe they said, rotzach chachamim, if it was a rotzach chachamim, you call them rotzach chachamim. Anyway, sure. What do you mean? Anshi richo. Ela kol shlo rotzach chachamim. Rather, everything was not rotzach chachamim. Ela shlo micha b'yadim, but they didn't protest what they did. Okay, so that's the machlekes in the Sefta. Our Mishnah that this Mishnah that says that they didn't protest either one is not going cannot be going like Rabbi Meir. So Mantana Kotze, Rabbi Meir can't be going like Rabbi Meir if it's our Mishnah, because Rabbi Meir says they did it, but Ratzon Chachamim. Not just lo michu did Ratzon Chachamim. So okay, Mishnah is Nachas Kai. Rather, this is going in the Mishnah Menachas. The Nia tells it says in Perek Shmuel, Anchi Chotzim Ratzon Chachamim Gochi Shlo Ratzon Chachamim Lo Michu Biyadam. Says they were Chotzim Ratzon Chachamim, like Pei Moshe mentioned in the Mishnah. Chachamim are okay with that, and they're Goydish. They made partial Ratzon Chachamim, but Lo Michu but they didn't make a mecha. But look, Amar Mantar Kotzim Ratzon Chachamim. That it says who's the one who holds Kotzim Ratzon Chachamim? Rabbi Meir. That's the Sefta. So Meir. Mantar Gochim Shel Ratzon Chachamim, who says that the Gochim was not Ratzon Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda. That was Rabbi Yehuda. In King Katani Bechada Bava. So then that the Gemara is going to ask. 1 second. And that the Gemara is going to ask that. Wait a minute. It seems that in one statement there in Menachos, it's both like Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, that's Gemara's inferred question here. So again, in Menachos it says there that Anchi Richo Kotzim Ratzon Begochin Shelo Ratzon Chachamim. So it's contradictory because Ratzon Chachamim is like Rabbi Meir, right? And Gochin Shelo Ratzon Chachamim is Rabbi Yehuda. Because so, how does that work? Okay, so again, it's going Mishnah Menachos, not our Mishnah. So Man Tarakotzim, who says you're allowed to be Kotzim Chachamim, who says Gemara, Meir. Man Tarakotzim, who says Gochim Shelo Ratzon Chachamim, that's Rabbi Yehuda. How do you have a Mishnah which is going to take part statement like part saying it's going to Meir, part saying it's going to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yaakov Basisi Kum Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yaakov Basisi said in front of Rabbi Yossi, Kol Amma Moedish Shekotzim everybody agrees that you can be koitzer before the Omer. As again, pretty much in the Mishnah. Everybody agrees that you're not goydish. Okay, that's you're not supposed to be goydish. And question but they're not allowed to do it. What's the machlokas from Meir Rabbi? It's a different machlokas altogether. Mafligin bar kovas the kolim. The machlokas about the grafting of the palm trees. Remember, keeping the kolim yom. They would graft the trees the entire day, and Chachamim were agreeable with this. Remember, Lo Yisu Rotzim Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda said it was not Rotzim Chachamim, and they were not the Chachamim were Moicha, but it was not Rotzim Chachamim. So the Machlekes was not about Kochim altogether. Machlekes was about Harkovas to Kolim. So the it doesn't say why Chacham are not Moicha here. I don't remember the Bavli gives a reason for it. The article says there's a weird question whether the Dover was Dover Oved. The Shiricha held that Harkovas Deka was a Dover Oved, and Chachamim said, "What's not Dover Oved can wait, but since you have a basis in halacha to do it, so therefore not going to be Moicha against you." Louis Divrahim, and he brings this down from some Meforshim, and he brings down another shot as well. That's from the Tzlach and Varshmon Tes Yontif. They brings down from the Meiri that whether the Isra doing Melacha Yudalad Achatzos depends on whether you're inside Yerushalayim, not inside Yerushalayim. And Chacham were not Moicha, even though they're even though they held this, it was outside Yerushalayim. But Louis Divrahim, I would say that the issue is they weren't Moicha because Bishop Eretz Yisrael. Because that we want fruit to grow in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, even though we're afraid, don't do it. But if we're not going to be Moicha, if you're doing something Yishuv Eretz Yisrael which doesn't have an outright Isser attached to it, they're not going to make a protest of it. Okay, so the Ketzu Korches Lishma. What does it mean Korches Lishma? What was this thing they would do? Amar Vacha, Amar Rabbi Zir, Amar Rabbi Lo. They would according to their opinion, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. They say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Echad, or the normal way. El Shem Masikim Ben Teva LeTeva. They wouldn't interrupt between the words. The commentator says Pshat Ben Shema Yisrael La Hashem. The Mashal Damar La Hashem. Sounds like they're saying to Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem. Hashem, listen to what Bnei Yisrael is saying, right? And they shouldn't also be Mashal Elokeinu to Hashem. That's or that we should say not Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, but Hashem who is Elokeinu, who is Hashem Echad. The Bnei Moshe says they would not, but they would say so quickly. They didn't slowly. They were so therefore they didn't have proper kavanah, not enough kavanah. The Mashbiach says that it's going not on the first pasuk in Shema, but rather on the later part of Shema, and things where we're supposed to interrupt between words like al levavcha. One of my pet peeves about the Art School Siddur is that al levavcha they do not, even though they have lines in all the other places where you're supposed to take to make a stop, right? Like after a mem before an aleph in Shema, in al levavcha and al levavchem, those cases they just have a makaf and no separation. There are other siddurim which do have the lines to demarcate separations, which just put a line there, despite the makaf, despite the hyphen. They put a hyphen and then a line. With the Art School, they just have the line. It always annoys me. So, this is the Mashbiach saying it's going on that they were not to make the proper interruption between the words like al levavcha v'chara, af, etc., etc. So it's not going first person necessarily, but it's going on the later psukim. Sorry, so this I parsed that sentence wrong. So Amar Ravacha, Amar Bilzira, Amar Loilah, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hashem Mafsikim B'Teva Teva, Divrei Rabbi Meir. Period. Rabbi Yehuda Meir Mafsikim. They would whatever interruptions that they make, whether it's like the Korban Pnei Moshe Mashbiach, El Shloim Riboch Shein K'vod Malchus Yom Avoid. they would not say Baruch Shem Kol Muktzah Avad between Shema and V'Ahavta. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Zira, Rabbi Law, Shema Yisrael Hashem. So that before was who? Before it was Rabbi Acha, Rabbi Zira, Rabbi Law. So now it's Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Zira, Rabbi Law. Okay, Shema Yisrael Hashem Ugomer El Shalom Asim and Echad Baruch. They made the to interrupt between Echad and Baruch. They would say both, but they wouldn't interrupt. They would just go straight into it. David Rabbi Meir and the Rabbi Yehuda Mem Asinayu El Shlohim Baruch Shem Kol Muktzah Avad. So do different pshatim and what exactly the two different versions of what Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda's difference of opinion was. Okay, next part of the Mishnah. Ketzad Matin Gim Zir Ketzad Hay Matin Gim Zir Shel Hekdesh. How are they Matin Gim Zir Shel Hekdesh? Okay, sorry, I got interrupted. Ketzad Hay Matin Gim Zir Shel Hekdesh. How are they Matin the Gim Zir Shel Hekdesh? What was their logic here? I'm going to said to them, ain't it my love be hektish? I'm certain that you concede. That's the point that things which grow from hektish are aser. So they said. So, Armalam said they said back. I was saying shiktishu. Our forefathers when they made these trees hektish, like the shel koiris. They only makdish the beams, not the trees themselves. I mean, they buy an egg rope because of tough people, ruffians, brigands, bandits, whatever. She'll show you bow. There should be boyin. Says probably the article is corrected already. She'll boyin with the she's bow to boyin. If you know there's some raw, they will come and take them forcibly. So therefore, they said it's in order to deter them, they made them hektish. Now, the article brings down the Bavli holds that the Anshe Bicho, Anshe hold that differently. They held that Gedulei Hektish don't have Me'ilah, because in this not Niskadosh B'Yadam, they Niskadosh Me'aleim. They came Kodesh on their own. And even though there's the Marmot Hektish, taking them is not theft, because Hektish itself is not makbid on that. The Chamim hold, no, that there's still it's a Rabbanan to derive benefit from Gilui Hektish, even though they were Niskadosh Me'aleim. But the Yerushalmi is not going with that. Yerushalmi has its own svar here, as it says here. They only makdish the beams which existed back then, and not the beams afterwards. So Ma Rabbanan Savim Meimu. What do Rabbanan hold? They hold Kos Upeos Ikdishin. Of course, not talking fruit here. The sycamore trees don't have fruit, right? So it's about the growth later on. So the Rabbanan hold. Initially, they're makdish both the beams and the growth. And that's why they were meicha. Or I feel they could be the Rabban also agreed. The forefathers only consecrated the koros and not the peros. But tzricha Rabbanan, nevertheless, the Rabbanan were not. It's possible to say Rabbanan that you're right, but we're not sure about it. Tzricha means they're mesupuk. Maybe if you're right, you're right. I really should phrase it differently. Let me rephrase it now. It's possible they're makdish only the koros and not the peros, only the beams at the time and not subsequent koros, but we're not sure. We don't know. So since we don't know, so therefore you can't take a chance. The Gemara asks a general question on this. I'm makdish or in this regard. A parallel question. I'm makdish the sadeh elon. Somebody consecrates an orchard, not an orchard, like a forest either, a place where trees are growing, field trees are growing. Can he say only makdish what's growing now and not what's going to grow later on? Let's learn out from here. So this is a Mishnah in Peah. The Mishnah says that if you were makdish a grapevine after the olos were ready, in other words, the stored grapes which go to the poor people are already recognizable. So once the olos are apparent, you can discern them. So the olos go to the poor people. So it seems you can be makdish a tree without being makdish the growth which comes later on. Says one, no, it's different. Shiny, she'ain she'ain da makdu shav she'ain shlo. Can't be makdish doesn't belong to you. So once they're nikah, that they're olos, they belong to aniyim. Of course, it can't be makdish them. Our question is where it doesn't yet belong to aniyim because it's not nikah. Can it be makdish? Distinguish between the tree and the subsequent growth later on. So they ask Gemara, well, that's a distinction. Matter if you learn the olos, you are olos aniyim. Even you can't tell that they're going to be olos, but they are going to be olos someday. So they should be aniyim, whether you can recognize them or not. If the issue is enodam makdish davashon, right? So shani he knows different who shu kerem lehektish, because there if it's not nikar, so it's like it says korban raise a kinoter kerem lehektish, but the olos. So you planted a kerem which as hektish, which is then from the olos. You know, before it's nikar at all, it doesn't belong to aniyim yet. It's like the entire kerem, including the olos, became consecrated to shamayim. The Tani we learned hanoker kerem lehektish. Somebody who plants a kerem for hektish, as hektish. But that peret mineral is bought from peret, which is one of the matnos aniyim. Orla, which is of course 3 years. Minarvai, the 4th year. Mina olos, and he's and for olos the chayv shvis. The only thing that's chayvan is shmita. Why? Rabbi Zeh B'Shem Yochanan said, "V'shav so'aret Shabbos laHashem." The land should rest during the 7th year of Shabbos to God. Hashem, kedushas shvis chalo olav. Even something which is has kedusha Hashem, it also is shaykh to the prohibitions of Shemitah. Okay, so therefore, what I'm saying that once no dualos, they belong to aniyim because it's davar she'eino shelo, because it becomes hektish. But before that. And it's like the entire kerem comes hektish, and that exempts that from olos. That brings us way to the top of Amud Aleph, so we'll stop here for today.